Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Food Chain with me, Emmanuel Bright-Kweku. Ghana's agricultural sector has suffered a major setback following the recent dry spell that has ravaged farms across 8 regions of the country with imminent food shortages. Over 435,000 farmers have so far lost their farms, with close to 1 million more at risk of losing their farms. The Agriculture Ministry instituted a raft of measures to ensure that these farmers get back on track. In today's episode of The Food Chain, we will put a spotlight on how this dry spell has affected farms and also market centers where, despite a ban on the export of grains, women or these maize vendors are struggling to access these commodities. We'll also interact with some experts on the way forward. But first, here is a report by my colleague Nane Aljima telling us about how farms in the Bono East region have been affected by the dry spell.
Ghana's agriculture is mainly rain-fed. Most parts of the country have 2 planting seasons dependent on the rainfall pattern. The major cropping season is between June and August, while September to October is the minor. Most farmers were expecting their crops to be ready for harvesting in August. Unfortunately, most crops have failed to fruit due to prolonged dry spell, with farmers losing their investment. Dr. Shalom Adodanso, a senior research scientist with Ghana's Forestry Research Institute, explains the vulnerability of farmers to weather changes and climate variability.
The temperature is increasing, rainfall has become erratic. But now you have a situation where sometimes you have a very intense rainfall, but within a short time. Then it can also be accompanied by dry spell durations. So it is very clear. The main issue is, how do you now adapt?
Agabuga in the Pro-East district of the Bono region is among the worst affected communities by the dry spell in the country. Most people here are farmers who have heavily relied on agriculture for their livelihoods. Campena Vetra, who is in his early 30s, made a decision to expand his maize farm from 3 to 5 acres for this planting season. With the heavy investment on labor, seedlings and chemicals, he was expecting a bumper harvest, but the young farmer is witnessing the opposite.
We were expecting rains in June and July, but it never came. The maize should be fruiting by now, but it is not. The weather does not support farming. It may lead to shortage of food on the market.
Walking through the farm, the soil is dried up. Most of the maize plants here are turning brown from the green leafy ones normally noticed with healthy plants. The corn ears which house the cobs are dried, affecting the development of the kernel. Jacob Naja weaves through his yam farm as he hopes for the rains. The delay in rains have prolonged the readiness of the tuber for harvesting, but the farmer continues to be expectant. With good rains, the tuber could be ready for market in the next few weeks.
We farm maize and granules as well. They are all not doing well now. This year, we will need the government support to cater for our families. We pray they have pity on us.
To many farmers, poor irrigation continues to be the bane of productivity, with no deliberate effort by successive governments to deal with the situation. The government's One Village, One Dam program, which was aimed at ensuring continuous supply of water for irrigation, failed to help mitigate the dry spell period. Agric Minister Brian Echampon attributes the ongoing dry spell to climate change, stressing the core issue is not irrigation but the shifting weather patterns. Agriculture economist Professor Robert Adu, however, explains poor implementation of the irrigation program has negatively affected efficiency.
The idea was fantastic, because if those dams were working, then at least those in those communities will have access to water which they can use to irrigate. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be across so many villages, and it was a bit overwhelming. I think that going forward, if government can focus, then within, let's say, a district, if you can even have just 4 places where you can have irrigation scheme that is working, it will help.
The impacts of the farmers' losses are felt on the markets. Maize vendors are struggling to access the crop from local farms as they compete with foreigners who are offering better price alternatives. We visited some market centers in Kumasi. Gifty Asante Prempe, a maize vendor at the Alaba market, beckons potential customers to purchase a few kilos of maize in stock. While she clamors for her goods to be sold, she is worried about how to restock. She has in the past few days struggled to access maize to restock.
Maize isn't available as of now. Even those that are on the markets now are really expensive. Some Nigerians and Burkinabes are really worrying us.
This is in spite of a recent ban imposed by the Agricultural Ministry on the exports of essential grains like maize, influenced by the dry spell that has ravaged farms in 8 regions of the country. The situation has compelled vendors in the north, including foreign nationals, to move down south in search of the grain on local farms. The scarcity of the grain is pushing prices upward.
A sack of maize is selling at a minimum 1,000 cedis. Even with that, we aren't getting some to buy.
Maize, as a major staple crop in Ghana, is used for a variety of delicacies, including porridge, swallows like banku and kenke. This is one of the kenke making hubs here in the Ashanti region, located specifically in the Oforiko municipality. And this is the daily source of income for the women who inherited the trade from their foremothers. But the scarcity of maize on the markets is taking a toll on what they used to fend for their families and themselves. Rukaya Youssef has been in the fancy kenke making business for more than 2 decades.
We aren't getting some of the maize to buy. Just 3 days ago, someone came here for money, but she said she couldn't get some of the maize.
With a few bags of maize they've had in the past week, the women make balls of both ga and fanti kenke out of them. While ga kenke has seen an increase in cost, fanti kenke producers are contemplating increasing the price. The women are finding alternatives to supplement the few condo they make to stay in business.
A company makes condo. Sometimes you buy from them, but it's not better off than you preparing it yourself.
Maize forms 50% of Ghana's total cereal production and the second largest commodity crop after cocoa. Back at the markets, the traders are predicting protracted maize shortages.
There will be huge shortage of maize on the market soon.
With the prevailing challenges befalling the sector, there are admonitions for an introduction of a competitive price purchasing regime to deal with the unrelenting habits of farmers exporting the cereals.
I am just praying and hoping that government will be able to maybe buy the grains in the system at some competitive prices and then leverage on the facilities that Ghana Buffer Stock Company and Ghana Commodity Exchange the facilities they have, so that once government gets them from farmers and they store in these facilities, they can release them onto the market at periodic times so that it can ease the prices going forward. Otherwise, if we leave it to the forces of demand and supply, what is going to happen is that those who have money now are likely to go in, then they will buy in large volumes, they will hoard it, and then when prices have escalated to certain levels, then they will bring it out and they will take advantage of the shortage and now price it at levels that will go beyond the pocket of the ordinary person. And so I'm just hoping that government will not limit it to just the banning of export and bringing in some food commodities, but they will also use buffer stock and Ghana Commodity Exchange as tools and vehicles to be able to stabilize the situation going forward.
And so that's the impact from the farm and also on the markets. We have been speaking with some experts on the way forward, what farmers can do to adapt to these climatic changes, and also how the government's measures can actually influence or bring better options to the farmers. I have been speaking with Dr. Stephen Yeboah, who is a senior research scientist at the Crops Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research.
The current dry spell situation is a crisis one because it is occurring in about 8 of 16 regions in Ghana. And these areas constitute the breadbasket of the country, especially the grains. So if you take the 8 regions where we are currently experiencing dry spell, it constitutes about 62% of the grains produced in the country. So that should tell you that this is a very significant situation, because if you have about 62% of your land area that produce your grains under dry spell, it means you have imminent food shortage coming up at the household level and at the national level. So the situation is not a good one, it's a crisis, because we have many of our households depending on grains, maize, sorghum, millet for their livelihood, and then many of them cannot harvest anything. Personally, I have been in the 4 regions in the northern Ghana since this incident was announced. I've gone around northern region, some of the districts like Tolon, like Kumbugu have been there, Savilugu have been there, Upper West region, I've gone to Laura, Jirapa. I have seen physically devastation. A lot of crops are wilted. You will see crops suffering from water stress, and then many of the fields have not even tasseled, and then they are dying off. So I have seen a lot of devastation happening. If you go to Upper East, Bongo areas, Katsina, Nankana, they are all having the same kind of situation. So you have large acreages of farmers' fields under water stress, and then so likely you see the field, you just see that this farmer is not going to harvest anything, even if the rain should come tomorrow, because the crop has elapsed their ability to develop further. The issue is that the fields that are already established have undergone water stress situations, so they are devastated. They are gone. More than 80% of those fields cannot come back, even if it rains continuously. So one of the things government said they are going to do is to provide seed for people to replant. Yeah. So that's why the concept of replanting. Replanting indicates that the field that are already been established cannot survive again. So they are cutting it down to plant. But the issue has to do with the timing, the period left for the season to end. Because most of the farms are rain-fed. You understand? Yeah. It's rain-fed agriculture. Yeah. So they are relying on natural rainfall for the whole cropping season. So if 2 months of that is gone, and then you are providing seed for the people to go and replant, are they going to replant under the same rainfall condition for the shorter growing season, or they are going to replant under irrigated fields? And then we all understand how irrigation is an issue in Ghana. So that is the issue with it. As for the concept of replanting, fine, because the fields are gone. So the only thing the farmer can do is to replant. But the whole issue with the replanting is the period left for the season to end. What kind of crop can you replant to be able to harvest for the rest of the season when you are doing rain-fed agriculture? And then if you are replanting with early maturing varieties, that is very ideal. So because you don't have full season, the season is no more a full one. So you can only give a seed that can mature early. But the issue is that many of the seeds that are being provided, what is the maturity period? You understand? Because if we are in September and the farmers are replanting their fields in Upper West, Upper East, where we know rainfall have a shorter period to complete the season, then you can't give a seed that will have to grow for 70 to 80 days to mature. It means that seed, you can't harvest anything from it. So the critical issue is, what is the treat of the seeds that is being given out to the farmers? Yeah. How many days do those seeds require to mature? Okay. That is where the issue is. If you have a maize seed that is 65 to 70 days, then that is fair enough. But if you have a maize seed that is going to grow beyond 75 to 80 days to maturity, then that is a problem. So the concept of the replanting is okay, and then redistribution of seed or distribution of seed to farmers to replant is okay. But the biggest issue is, what is the trait of that seed? How early is that seed? Because if farmers are very reasonable. If they calculate in the seed, they see that they don't have enough time left to replant, they will collect the seed, but they will use it for a different purpose. The dry spell could still be an impact depending on how long we have, the duration of the spell of the dry. So it could still be an issue. But the effect would have been minimal. Okay. Because most of these varieties we have developed are drought tolerant. It means that it can still give you some minimum yield under water stress conditions. You know, Crop Research Institute or any of our research organizations, we are a research and development organization. So our job basically will be to evaluate and develop varieties of different trees, including drought and striga and all that. But beyond that, there are other agencies of government that are supposed to commercialize these varieties. Okay. By commercializing them, making them accessible, improving the accessibility to farmers. That is where the biggest issue is. Okay. You understand? Yeah. How to multiply and get the quantities that will be required by farmers. That is where the issue is. So it's two fronts. We have private seed companies that are licensed in Ghana, local seed companies licensed in Ghana that undergoes seed production, what we call certified seed production, foundation and certified seed production for farmers. But they are in business, but they are individual, they are business people, but they require support. Okay. You understand? Yeah. If you leave the local private seed company in Ghana to compete with a foreign established seed company, they can't survive. So they will still need government of Ghana support to be able to multiply and produce in large quantities the varieties developed and released by our research organizations in the country. And then the support should be sustainable. It shouldn't be 1 year event. The support should be sustainable so that then they will develop and be on their feet to be able to multiply and then produce these certified seeds and make them available to farmers.
Dr. Shalom Adodamso, who is with the Forestry Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, says farmers would also need to diversify their livelihood investments and reduce their exposure to climate risks.
Now we have climate smart agriculture, where you are looking at a number of options. So what it does is that you want to improve upon the productivity of agriculture within a small space, because now land is not available like it used to be. Because if you are not careful, then they move into the frontiers of the forest and clear. So you are looking at a situation where within that space of a land, you are increasing the productivity and also increasing the income of the farmer. But at the same time, their imprint on climate change is also reduced, so that the practices that they are doing does not lead to increase in the release of greenhouse gases. So, for instance, using different varieties of crop is very important. Cropping at different times, so like crop rotation. These things that in the past our farmers, they know already, but the only thing is that we back it with the science. Then incorporating trees into their farming system, especially cocoa, is very, very important. So, sometimes they're naturally fixing species. Because we did a research recently, where we looked at if you have a cocoa system that is agroforestry based, and a cocoa system that is just the sun-loving base without trees, what are some of the ecosystem services that can be produced? And what we saw was that if you take soil animals, the soil fauna, just soil animals in the soil, their number, their sizes were better in an agroforestry where you have cocoa that has trees than the ones that do not have trees. So what it tells us that, and these animals are very important in the whole ecosystem. And Ghana has our policy framework when it comes to adaptation. So the national adaptation framework, adaptation framework plan is there that gives us the space to be able to now implement actions. One, the framework helps you to be able to coordinate all the efforts and do it sustainably. So that is number one. So it means that whatever we're doing should be within that framework that exists as a nation at every level, at the national level, regional level, district level. Okay. If you look at the framework, there are two important strategies that you can take out of it. One is a community-based approach. So the community-based approach puts the community at the center of any strategy that you are implementing. You want to improve upon, increase their resilience and reduce their vulnerability. And you are using some of the local knowledge and indigenous that exists and whatever they know already as the foundation to build on your strategy. So you are looking at, they know that the weather is changing. How do you add that to science and to give them weather information so that now it can help them? Reducing in terms of risk when it comes to disaster. So these are some of the strategies that at a community level you can implement. Now, if you look at the other side is that, most of our communities all depend on natural resources and land-based resources. So it means that you can also look at ecosystem-based approaches where you are using the management, the conservation of ecosystems like forests, like wetlands, like river bodies, like grassland, and use that to now enhance the resilience of local communities. So for instance, if you have a situation where harvesting of you are protecting the forest, so assuming that you have a situation where you have areas that are degraded, some of our forests are degraded, you restoring those degraded areas with our own indigenous species can help.
Our climate is ever changing, and both governments, farmers, and even other stakeholders must adopt measures, including climate-smart agriculture, to adapt to these climatic conditions. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion here on the Food Chain. Join me same time next week for another exciting episode. My name is Emmanuel Bright Kweku.